Welcome back, everyone. Here we are in March of 2025. Only 1 week to go to daylight savings time. I'm pretty excited about that. So we are here with our panel. We have Jim Porter, Karen Elkins, John Bonzel. We have another one that will be joining us, Margaret Rue. And we have an awesome lesson here tonight, lesson 36, unit 9. Before we get started, we typically do a meditation, and we typically do it to ocean sounds. We've got a little bit of a change of plans here tonight, but did want to see the image that John had the pleasure of taking a look. John, where is this?
That is from the 16th floor balcony view at Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and South Carolina is battling some fires in that area tonight. So I'm asking you please to cover that area and some positive thoughts and healing, please. As we begin, though, we're not doing the ocean sounds tonight. We had a request at the last show, at the last episode, and we had someone request that Ken record the invocation of the night. And so sure enough, he did, and Karen has worked her magic. So for tonight, we're going to kick off with this invocation of the night. And if you would like to either listen to it silently or enjoy the journey, why don't we go ahead and take a look? Here you go. This comes from the Divine
Invocation for the night from the message of the Divine Iliad. My day is done. The portals of thy night encircle me. The peace of thy rest encompass me. To thy heavens decentrate me, O my Father, and thus renew me for reconcentrating upon Mother Earth for one more day of manifesting thee. I feel thee coming, ever coming to sever spirit of me from its sense clay to take back to source of me, for reborning with its sense clay image at the dawn. Unto the calm of thy light, O Lord of day and night, take light of me to rest in thee for renewing when dawn reborns from night. Destroy thou that ego, which is not thee in me. Let myself be thyself in me. Let soul of me be patterned by thy rhythmic thinking. Merge thou thy light in mine. Dissolve thou my separateness and make me one with thee. Unite thou me with thee by voiding me. Exalt thou me. Take thou me unto thy high mountain top in ecstasy, that my morrow may reflect thy glory in manifesting thee. Within the oneness of thy spirit, let me find surcease from action as waves of ocean find surcease in ocean's calm. And in my surcease from body sensing, give to me thy omnipotent power to manifest thy rest in balanced actions for my new day. And in those actions of my morrow, intensify thou my awareness of light of thee, centering thy image in clay form of me. Give to me to know those things I now know not, that I may be reborn with just one whit more of thy light, of thy omniscient centering my feeble knowing. From thy all-existing knowing, give to me thy all-knowing, bit by bit, that I may more strongly manifest thee in my morrow. Upon my heart, those unsolved problems of my day are plainly writ for solving in thy light for my new day. O thou Lord of the high heavens and earths, of thy imaged mortal self, reillumine thou the pale light of my veiled immortality, while upon a shelf of earth I lay my slowly pulsing mortal clay to die its nightly death for daily resurrection. Reattune the discords of my mal-patterned thinking with the harmonies of thy balanced rhythmic thinking. Let the measure of thy thinking be my measure, thy rhythm be mine. Resound the pulsing of my heartbeat to synchronize with thine. Immunize thou my man-formed clay from toxins of unrhythmic pulsing begot from unbalanced thinking and from wrong action. Void thou the fears of my unknowing of the light of my path is thereby made dark. Thus fortify thou my desensed clay image of thy imagining and mine, for greater mirroring of thy light through light of me. Thus balance thou my imagining with thine, that my imagining may be wholly thine. Thus re-inspire me with more knowing of thy purpose, that I may worthily fulfill thy purpose. Thus, cleanse clay of me, balance it in rhythms of thy balanced thinking, to purify it in truth for its new day of manifesting thee. Enfold thou my spirit, O heavenly night, enshroud thou me in thy veiled mysteries, and deliver my resurrected clay to dawn again, renewed again, made whole. Reborn thou me in thy consciousness, that I may again sing a glad song of one more cosmic day in light of new knowing. To thee, O Father of thy heaven, of this earth, where thou hast sent me to serve thee worthily, I commend my spirit, soul, and forgetfulness of all else but light of thee.
What a beautiful gift. What a beautiful gift.
Thank you, Ken.
So he is here with us, even though he's not here with us this evening. We also have Margaret joining us here this evening, so we're going to bring her on. And I want to, I'll ask the team right quick to just explain, Ken can recite the salutation of the day by heart. He's been doing that for 30 years. We have that on the YouTube channel. So John, just quickly in a 60 seconds, for those that are new, what is the salutation of the day and the invocation of the night, please?
It is basically what Doctor received from God in his illumination. It kind of, it wasn't in his grand illumination, I don't think. I believe he received that earlier on. And it's basically a sequence of how Dr. Russell starts his day, of acknowledging his sensed body, if you will, and where he is, and acknowledging God and God's power and God's presence. And then he asks for guidance throughout the day. And should he screw up, that's okay. He'll wake up to another day and
Yes.
and pursue and try to make that perfect in its doing. But it's beautiful that it's day and night.
Yes. So the night one is a little harder, as it has a different kind of language. And we will have two versions of that on the YouTube channel. We'll have one without text and one with text. And so a gracious thank you, Karen, as you pulled that together as a gift for everyone. So thank you. So I did want to bring up a couple of comments before we start with what we normally do. Kenneth Meadows, let's do the first one. He said, last week, I thanked everyone for allowing me to be part of this. This week, I'd like to personally thank John Bonzel for leading me here. I'm all in. Thanks for everyone's opinions as I catch up. So welcome, everyone. What a lovely
All right,
sentiment.
Kenny
Kenneth.
boy,
Thank you
good
so
to
much.
see you, man. Good to have
So
you,
good
buddy.
to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you, Rita and Karen, Dee, and so many of you, and Linda and Bonnie, everyone that comes in each week. So let's just take a look wanted to remind everybody there on slide 2 about this very famous quote by Walter Russell. Margaret, would you do us the honor of sharing that particular quote?
Mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed.
That is what this whole entire Awaken Your Inner Genius is based on. And I want to remind you of the quote on the next page. And this one with a great fanfare. Jim, what's this quote? Because it's important for our new folks.
If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe.
All right. So this Awaken Your Inner Genius has two focuses. One is the man who tapped. As you will see that we everything about the Awaken Your Genius funnel. We'll go on to the next slide there, James. We'll show we start off with the man who tapped because it's a lovely on-ramp to the work. But our focus is really in on the home study course. And so that's what we are there at the end, towards the end of now. We've been going since last year. We're in Unit 9, at the end of Unit 9. So congratulations to everyone who's been with us. Wanted to give you a quick snapshot as you see the next page. This is where we're at here in March. We have been working hard to follow Walter and Lao Russell recommended prescription suggested of doing 1 unit per month. Because that's the idea of the home study course, isn't it, John? 1 unit per month.
Yes, I wanted to give our audience a everyday example of our first quote of how mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. So this past week as I was golfing for 4 days. And as I wrapped up, I remember a quote a fellow associate gave to me. He said, "John, you showed signs of brilliance in a sea of mediocrity."
Well, there you go.
So
There
that
you
keeps
go.
me moving forward.
As we still are moving towards that.
Towards
So
me.
before we begin the lesson, we had just a couple of exciting things to announce here. I'm going to first of all, I do want to mention that we did for something unusual tonight. That invocation of the night is actually in the comments of our YouTube channel. So while you're listening, if you feel so inclined, please go to that YouTube channel. I know you're on it now, but look in the comments and like that video. And James, if you would come off of the background, please, and just give everybody a quick update about what we're working on for our 24-hour channel.
All right. So we have a lot of stuff going on. First, I will cover what's going on with our 24-hour channel. You can go there at any time, and there is a video that John has shared with the ocean sounds for meditation. Beginning tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., you will be able to watch lesson 1 of unit 1, and every day at 10 a.m. there will be another lesson for you to watch. And then on Friday, we'll have the visual journey that Karen gives to us one of the visual journeys from that unit that Karen gives to us. So just tune in 10 a.m. We'll have a lot more videos showing up on the live channel. And then, of course, if you want to catch this show live, show back up 7 p.m. every Sunday evening. And I did want to mention one comment from Kenneth. He mentioned that, I'll pull that up, that he cannot find Unit 2. It is actually under the playlist tab on YouTube. So if you just go to playlist, you'll be able to watch any of the units that we've covered so far. So a lot more cool stuff coming, website, blog posts, email list, all of that great stuff. And we'll have some announcements on that soon.
All right. So gracious, thank you. And so what we're trying to do is recognizing that we're finishing up Unit 9. We'll be starting Unit 10 next week, but that means anybody who joins us new, we've got a little bit of catching up to do. So they are all on YouTube, but now we're going to cycle them on the 24-hour channel. So you don't even have to think or push play. You can just plug into the 24-hour channel and all of our old episodes will be coming up. So that is exciting indeed. All right, panel, are you ready for our lesson here this evening?
We are ready.
Drum roll, please. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. And at the end of each unit, what Walter and Leo did, if you'll explain that just a little bit, Margaret, at the end of every single unit in the home study course, they focused on student questions. Why did they do that?
You know, they got so many letters coming in from students and they saw a pattern in the questions. So they felt that they could answer them, kind of cut to the chase by answering all the common questions.
All right,
And
well, that ties right
very
in.
helpful too.
Well, they are helpful, and I've seen some of these letters in the archives, Margaret. And so, if you'll please read over there on page 703, you'll see where I have it yellow highlighted. But if you could start with that first paragraph, I have written down 4 questions, and because there's a really important point that even though we're going through questions, they want us to go inside. What do we have to say, Margaret?
Okay. I have written down 4 questions to ask you, but have obeyed your instructions to withhold them to see if I could not myself answer them. What you say about all questions being answerable within ourselves seems to come true the moment I turn within myself for the answer instead of outside.
And John, if you would, the place that's circled with a highlight there again.
Yeah. Again, we insist that each individual person is an extension of the source of all knowledge. Why seek knowledge through another when it is within oneself?
So, John, if you could comment right quick. I mean, one of the conversations that we had when we launched this is that the Russells, you know, all three of the folks you see on the screen all worked very closely with Lao Russell, and they believe that this is a self-study course for a reason. So, if you could comment, and then I'll go to Jim and end up with Margaret. Why is it important for everyone, even though we're doing this as a gift from our hearts to the universe? Why is it still important to go within? John?
Well, again, it is an individual study. It's you rediscovering your divinity. All right. And it's one-on-one, you and God. And the beauty of how the Russells have written the home study course walks you through it as gently as they can. They're introducing a new language to you, new principles, and so on. And that's what its intention was to be,
Yes.
is you and God. Now, what we're doing collectively is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing because it's not just us reading and just doing our own thing. And collectively, hopefully, we can awaken far more people that than we could as individuals.
Yes. Yes. Jim, quick comment there. Why is it important for people to go within?
Because we spend our lives being attracted to and reacting to things without ourselves. And it's the within journey that gives true awakening and true fulfillment. That's why they literally start the course off with meditation and prayer. That's not an accident. That's how you learn to commune with your source. And once you can master that, even to a small degree, it changes your life dramatically.
Okay. Thank you. Margaret, last thought.
Yeah, I would say that whenever you get any kind of like flash of inspiration or a great idea, it comes seemingly out of the blue. And so I think the Russells, by encouraging us to be alone during our study, we're more apt to have those, great ideas or aha moments when we're alone rather than, dancing around in the world. So
Yes. Well, and what's interesting about this is when we assembled the panel, we were wanting to capture many of these folks that have had, I mean, right there, you're looking on the screen, over 150 years. Are y'all feeling a little seasoned like steak? 150 years of wisdom here as their interpretation. But we also brought Karen and I on and along Ken. So collectively, it's over 200 years here, but it's never going to replace your personal journey. And that's what we want to be really, really clear about. So yes, this is a gift of the heart. But Karen, Terry, Rebecca, Meredith, all of you, you have the answers inside. And so every single time that we do this, there's a different path to go, and we will never be able to cover all that is inside. So let's take a look at the top of page 704, because I thought this was really important. Someone else who has the knowledge can open the door to it for you to enter, but you must enter that door yourself. Another can but re-inspire you to gain knowledge for yourself, as another can awaken you the power to heal yourself, but no other person can heal you himself or give you knowledge. God awareness and you alone does that. And that was really, really important. So why don't we begin with the first question, John, if you would. Start there where the green star is, scrolling down just a bit, James. Let's start with the first question because this was a loaded one.
Hoo-hoo. All right, here we go. Does the wholeness of God grow in potential through this divided and multiplied principle of creation? Is that the purpose of this simulated universe? The question as to this simulated universe has desired an answer for some time. You want me to read the answer?
Actually, I'm going to have Margaret read the answer and
All
then
right.
have you and Jim comment as well as Margaret. So Margaret, if you'll read that first paragraph, please.
right. God does not grow in potential. God is already omnipotent. The potential of power which God has in his being is the measure of desire in him to create his universe. That omnipotence is unchanging. It does not grow more or become less. That unchanging condition is the zero of equilibrium and is the still fulcrum from which multiplied and divided power extends as a lever extends from its fulcrum.
All right, so that's a pretty big answer there. So who wants to chime in for some conversation? Jim, do you want anything to say?
Not at this point.
Not at this point. Okay.
No,
I'll give you a couple comments, Kimberly.
Thank you. Jim.
Okay.
That answer is, it's very important for people to know that God is. And through the lessons, we've had the term omnipotence and omniscience and omnipresent.
Mhm.
And God is unchanging, all-knowing and all-powerful. So God doesn't get more powerful or less powerful, and he doesn't just show up sometimes and not others.
Sure.
Okay? And all knowledge is his. But also know that it is yours. That is your inheritance. And that's what we're trying to do here through these lessons, is make you aware that's also your gift from your creator. And the more that you can accept that, then the more powerful you become, the more knowledgeable you become, and the more present you become in that state of knowing.
Well, and I want to encourage everybody who's listening to please, everybody who's on YouTube, TikTok, and all of our other channels, please type in the chat box the word omnipotent. Before I became familiar with the Russell work, I really wasn't as familiar with these 3 words. And I think it's important that we really have them and invite them to be part of our DNA as we're moving forward. So omnipotent. So just jot down that word, put it in the chat box, and just become familiar, and even make that maybe an assignment for you this week, is to really spend time in meditation about what does that word mean. Omnipotent is a very big word, and we have a lot more to come from that.
Can I
Now,
jump in here for a second, Karen? Kim, just a second.
yes.
Point out to people why I'm not quick to answer this. After being over nearly 50 years as a student, I still struggle with this. Not that God is omnipotent and omnipresent, that I agree with, and that divine omniscience exists within me. But the struggle that I still to this day have with body sensing versus that knowing how to attune to it, it's still there, even though I believe I've come a long way. I have difficulty with that. When I look at it in its initial form, the way it's being said, it almost sounds to me like the man's question is, in the universe, or body, this duality is present. It's not, God is not whole and complete in us. And I understand what they're saying is God is whole and complete forever. But I agree that divine, absolute knowledge of that divine in me is not whole and complete to my sensed awareness yet.
Okay.
And, so it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Well, and I appreciate that. Even as a 50-year student, you're still learning and diving into some of these concepts, and this is a lifetime journey, So I do want to, yes, John, and I'm going to go on to the next page.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on that. So here you have Jim, 50-year student, knew the master herself, and one of her great statements of all time is that one of man's greatest challenges is to learn of his divinity, then live it. And that's not an easy statement. It's easy to repeat or quote it. And the knowledge that Jim has and he has gained, I'm just saying that it's not an overnight, it's not an overnight thing that you go, oh, geez, I'm God. Not the God, but a God. And wow, I'm all powerful and all knowing and all present. That is a huge concept to absorb.
It is. I mean, that's a large part of what my book was about, just helping women discover that they had more power. So we in this reality really have mastered giving away our power. So, I mean, that is something that this reality really hones in and teaches. I want to continue to be sure that we answer more of this. There's always so much more, but I would like us to go into the middle of page 705, and you're going to see where I have the brackets. And John, I'm going to ask you if you would read that first paragraph all the way down in relation and go all the way down to where I have the highlighted sentence, and then I'll go to Margaret.
Very good. In relation to your question regarding this simulated universe, we mean that all creation is only God's imaginings. The universe is a cosmic cinema, a multi-projection of the dual light of God's thinking onto the blank screen.
Screen.
Thank you. Every happening unhappens as it happens. Everything in nature is forever walking into a mirror of itself, so that one motion in one direction voids the other opposite one. As a pendulum swings one way, an invisible one swings the other way with equal and opposite force to void the other swing of it.
Okay, before we, so I'm going to just, Margaret, if you'll continue reading what's underlined in the next sentence, and then I want our team to sit down and talk about this because this was really important. And even Karen Elkins, I'll have join back in because there was a question about this. Our senses are limited, Margaret.
Our senses are limited to seeing only one half of the effect. We see events in forward time only. Hence, we have sequences of events following each other like day and night. From this illusion of motion, due to limited sensing, time is conceived.
All right, so let's pause for just a moment. I'm going to go see if I can grab a pendulum. Team, why don't you dive in and talk about this? Every happening unhappens as it happens. Who wants to dive in?
Well, I could just chime in first, because this universe is a balanced equilibrium. That's why every motion has to be balanced with its simultaneous reaction so that everything is in equilibrium. And it seems almost fantastic. This one paragraph, it seems almost impossible to comprehend. But I think the reason why creation is the way it's developed, we do see a forward motion, and that's actually purposeful for us because we can make sense of things. I still remember one time Leo said if we remembered everything from all our previous lifetimes, we wouldn't be able to function in this lifetime. So in other words, there's a reason for the limitations so that we can move forward. And throughout life, we do knock ourselves around, we do suffer, we do kind of, make mistakes. But with each mistake, we're growing and hopefully perfecting ourselves upward.
Okay, so I know John's got a comment, but I'm going to ask James to bring up slide 35 because this is one of Walter Russell's illustrations, and as I believe ties into this. John, continue the conversation, please.
Well, what I wanted to do is have our audience look at your caption, love and balance.
Oh my.
Okay.
Okay.
Our Creator loves us so much. All right. To give us the ability to sense that forward motion and those sequences of events, which we call time. And like Margaret said earlier, but if we had 360-degree vision and we were able to see the avoidance principle happen, there would be no sense of time. And you would lose your damn mind in a matter of minutes.
Yes, I know.
Okay?
Yes.
So,
all right, so let's pause for just a minute. I want to go back. So I know this is a lot, but I just wanted to take this because, I mean, if we think about the cosmic pendulum, what they're saying is that as it moves forward, supposedly, it's also got this motion going back. As a new student, am I saying that? Am I saying that properly?
Yes.
Well, there would be like with each swing, right? There's another swing. It's an invisible swing,
Right.
actually crossing over the other direction.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and so does that tie into the image that we had on the screen? Yes or no?
yes,
Okay. We'll pull that back up.
same thing, same principle.
So explain this if you would. Just point people to the direction. I believe this came from the Universal One.
Yes.
Okay. We're not going deep into this. I simply wanted to pull this up for anybody who's just interested in this. But this is where he was trying to map out. He didn't have all the holographic and Photoshop and Adobe effects and all the things that we do now. But he was trying to map out what's being explained in this paragraph. Was he not?
Yeah, that's why you see the vortex in the middle. He's trying to show that this is a three-dimensional action, equal and opposite directions. Half of the cycle we experience in body through sensing. The other half comes from Creator, and we are not aware of that until we have great epiphanies.
Okay. All right. So this is
You
a big,
know,
yes, Margaret.
Anybody that's had like a near-death experience usually experiences timelessness. They're in this realm, and they don't really know how long they're gone until they come back, and then the hospital tells them, but they're like in total timelessness. So, it could feel like an hour and it might be 2 minutes, in other words. So the people that have near-death experiences generally do experience the timeless factor.
They do. And we keep hearing from, regardless from which really healing modality or teachings out there, everybody keeps saying, come back to the now moment. And the now moment is that this issue, what we're talking about, is that being right there, centered, understanding this cosmic pendulum.
Yeah, the eternal now. I experienced it in my near death. I was in universality. There was no here nor there. There was no up or down. There was no right or wrong. There was just absolute, unbelievably unexpressible love, and that doesn't even touch it. And you're not present. In my case, as the 5-year-old child, I was not present with God. I was present as God and experiencing the eternal presence. It's because when you think about that from a body sense, you think there's a here and there. There's no here nor there. There is eternity there. Now is eternity, and that you're sensing. You're knowing that you're not sensing it. You are in that presence, and it's overwhelmingly magnificent, beautiful. I've read poets all my life. I've never seen. Walt Whitman came the closest to it. I've never seen anybody that touches on that presence. But I was lucky enough, as I said before, and I'll keep it very brief. I was also still attached to body, so I was experiencing my universality as a God-centered universal being, and I was experiencing my mortality at the bottom of the pond at the same moment. And it stunned me to this day, who experienced both effects. And
Yes.
Anyway, so Margaret's dead on it.
Well, and even myself, the point that I reached one time, very close to the 0 point, I in a meditative state, deep meditative state in the middle of the night, that expansion where it just becomes almost, it's the universal heartbeat. It is simply just the breathing of the cosmos. And it is profound. It is beautiful. It is timeless, and it is magnificent. I mean, magnificent and very, very powerful. So that's part of the joy. And actually, that's part of what their goal is in the work, is to have us actually be able to reach that timeless point. That's really where they're trying to say, is to leave the sense body and access that. So last comment before our break, Margaret?
Well, I was just going to say, in the earlier unit, when she's trying to tell us it's life and it's rest. And so life is visual, rest is invisible. So that's why they're trying to get rid of the word death. So, there's life, which is compression, and then there's a letting go, and there's a rest coming back to equilibrium, which is invisible, but we're still there. So in other words, it's the continuance of life.
Well,
Whether
and
you're visible.
They'll
or
mention that in a
invisible.
moment.
Yeah.
They get into give and re-give. Is what it is give and re-give.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no death.
Well, and for any of you that are new to the work, even when you go to the website to learn more about the Russells at philosophy.org, you will actually see where they don't say death, living, birth, and death. They say refolded. And that is all ties back into this, is this idea of refolding. And wouldn't that be a beautiful way for us to handle as humans if we genuinely understood that, which is part of why we're having these conversations. But it is time for our first break. We've learned long ago that these are big concepts. We need your sense self to be able to absorb it and set back. So please stand up, get some water, take some extra deep breaths. We will see you in 3. All right, if you will find your way back, please. And as we wait for everybody, I wanted to bring up 2 comments in the chat box. I think it's important for if we could bring Bonnie's comment, and then we're going to go to Karen Mahan at the bottom. But Bonnie says it's really hard to expand on the vastness understanding of God when I've had so much religious training. It has never explained God this way and how we pray to Him. Bonnie, I'm in complete agreement with that. And for those of you that are new, when you study the home study course, you will hear the Russells refer to the Creator, Mother, Father, God. They will refer to this in multiple ways. And so it's important to know that as well. Karen Mahan says this, and I totally agree with you, Karen. She says, if you would, John, read this comment.
Yes, it's hard to hold the knowledge and be in this world of sensing. And I get that. I get that. But the more God aware you become, the easier it becomes as well. So
Okay.
if it was a piece of cake, we wouldn't need to be having this broadcast because everybody would already know everything and we all be kumbaya and all that stuff. So.
Well, I look forward to that day someday coming, John. That is what we're working on. So I'm hopeful. I remain hopeful.
Can I jump in here for a second? Just a second. With the experiences that I had as a child, and you'll read this from many people that have experienced near deaths, is you come back into body and having experienced universality, it's an amazingly, almost profoundly lonely state that you find yourself back in at first, because you're limited to this very limited sense self after having experienced the greater you.
Yes.
And it can be difficult. And I had difficulty for years in my childhood. I got through it and I felt great joy. And I love being in a physical body. I love the opportunities of life. But at the same time, with the passing of my wife recently, I found that ache returning, because when you leave the universal knowledge that you're in and come back to the limitations of the body, it's heartbreaking, because that communion is no longer there. And so it's,
Yes.
I say that to people because people say, oh, I wish I could experience it. No, when you're, just like Leo said over and over again in her loving way of teaching us, you want to experience it in small steps and small intuitions, like Margaret said, and small awakenings, small
Yes.
like, because to experience it in its totality makes it so hard for you to function again with that beautiful ignorance that you have, not knowing that in your body. It can be difficult.
There is something poetic about that, Jim, and I'll be very honest. I had the broadcast a few weeks ago about my experience of when I felt I was leaving the earth plane. My biggest challenge over the past month was, and still is being back here. And you will, when you read most near-death experiences or hear people talk about that, they will say that they wanted to go back. They didn't want to return.
Yes.
And
my wife used to say, "Let it all come to me with ease and grace and love and gratitude." She had the wisdom to know not to rush it.
Yes. All right, panel, I'm moving us along. And Karen is helping us a lot. Karen Elkins in the background here. So thank you with some of the comments. So let's go to about the middle of page 706. Jim, I'm going to ask you to read that first underlined paragraph where it starts with creation. And then John, I'm going to have you do the second one. You ask the purpose, and Margaret, you do the third one. God desires to manifest love. Jim?
Oh, thank you, Kim. That's a good start from you right now. Creation is a wonderful and glorious vision, but it is no more reality than the cinema you see in the theater. That cinema consists of motion only, light in motion. Stop the motion, and the motion picture would instantly cease. Likewise, God's cosmic cinema would instantly cease if God stopped thinking. Likewise, you also cease to create when you stop thinking.
John?
All right. You asked the purpose of it all. From God's point of view, his purpose is to manifest that which he is in imaged form. God is light. God is love, God is truth, and the law, all meaning the same thing with differing connotations.
Thank you, Margaret.
God desires to manifest love. He does so by dividing the giving of love into two opposite directions. The opposite expressions of love are giving and re-giving, but it is this fact of division of giving into two opposite directions that the illusion occurs.
Okay, so let's talk about this because this is a little bit different. There's much to say here, so I'm simply pulling one nugget. They talk about the opposite expressions of love are giving and re-giving. So if everyone please type in giving and re-giving, because this is different than the vernacular we hear in this world of give and receive. So which one of you want to dive into separating the difference here? Because that is part of what the Russells are talk about is the giving and re-giving.
I have one comment, and I would say, I was helping an individual, an elderly lady, and she was really a very close friend. And we think we're doing something to help that person, but in actuality, the re-giving occurs in the doing of it. So it's simultaneous. So really, people, they think they're giving, but really they're doing it for themselves. And Leah used to say it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of like it's a selfish act, right? You're giving out of yourself, but it's simultaneously re-given because it's joyful to give out from yourself.
It is.
And so
It is.
So it's a simultaneous re-giving.
So, John, I wanted to bring up, and I might even ask James if he can come on screen. But when we did the Russell experiences, that was one of the questions and one of the concepts that you were teaching us was about giving and re-giving. And I don't know if you remember when we all sat in a circle and we had everybody kind of clap each other's hand, and we went around the circle and we talked about how if we didn't give and re-give, if we just let's say you and I came up to each other and we high-fived each other, we both gave it to each other, then it wouldn't be turning around to give it to somebody else. And there was a moment there where you actually showed us in real time that when give high five and then you turn around and you give it to somebody else and they turn around and give it to somebody else, and it becomes this perpetual wave in humanity. Do you remember that moment, John?
Do you realize how old I am, Kimberly?
All right, I'll see if James remembers that moment. But
No,
James, you're on mute. I'll have you come off mute.
I do remember that.
So can you comment on that, James? Because this was John trying to teach a group of people who are new to the teachings about giving and re-giving.
Yeah, it was. You think of the wave at a stadium, and it's just it's a cool example of it. And I think I also showed something about jujitsu and how it's the wave, and how even in jujitsu, if you don't take the energy that someone is giving you and you get too rigid, that's how you get submitted. That's how you get beaten. So you have to take that energy and then I love the term balanced interchange. And so it's rhythmic balanced interchange. And that's what jujitsu is. And that was one of the things that I thought I see so much in the world with jujitsu, and it's a philosophy of seeing the world. But I just think of so much when I'm reading the home study course, how much it applies even to a martial art. So yeah, it was a cool example.
Very, very powerful. All right, so I'll keep. So James still has his memory capacity. John, we'll work on you another day. So
you can borrow a few of my brain cells, John.
So do know that as we're going through this, the Russells spend quite a bit of time answering this one question. In fact, they go all the way into page 707. So we're still on the same question, and I'm simply pulling out a few nuggets because there are other questions that we want to go to. And so I wanted to jump ahead and ask John if you would read that middle paragraph. It says, from your own point of view, what is your purpose? And you'll see it highlighted here. I think these next two paragraphs are incredibly important. James? Pulling it up. So we're going to scroll down to where I have it in yellow highlight, and you're going to see the pink heart close to it. All right, perfect. Your purpose, John.
Okay. From your own point of view, what is your purpose? your purpose is to so multiply God awareness in you that your purpose is God's purpose. God awareness in you means becoming the being which God is. As that awareness increases, you then become love, which you manifest by giving. And you become truth and the law of balance, which you control. When God awareness is complete in you, you are the creator of all that is because of your knowing your oneness with the one. Want me to finish that up?
I'll go ahead, John, and then I'll have you all comment. When you have thus become the universal one being, and notice how they capitalize universal one being. I bring this up many times because there's no accident in how they capitalize things. When you have thus become the universal one being, you are then the ecstatic imaginer, the cosmic dreamer of dreams, the visioner of idea, and the creator of imagined bodies for imagined idea. And so they went on to say, this is a brief answer to the question. To grasp it more fully, you must fill in the gaps of your lack of understanding by studying all of the lessons from the beginning and meditating upon them. So let me pause for a moment. I put a big heart by there because can you just please place in the chat box, everyone, the cosmic dreamer of dreams. Part of what I found, besides the spirituality and the science and the philosophy that was so appealing to the Russells, part of the appeal for me was the sheer poetry of how they speak. This is something that is just beautiful. And when you think about bringing beauty to the world and it inspiring your heart, I mean, the ecstatic imaginer, the cosmic dreamer of dreams, the visioner of ideas. I mean, how much better does it get than that?
True.
I think too what they're conveying here is, each step you take as you're becoming more truthful to yourself, more truthful to the world, you're giving out of yourself, you're insulating yourself from going backward. And you can only go forward because you're insulating your thinking to all that is good. And even when you look at world events, there seems to be turmoil, but you have to look at the broad picture and say that, it'll probably work its way out. There's a bunch of conflict that's manifesting, but you as an individual, you know that it's going to play out in the end.
And that's really important. So for everyone who is tuning in now or even in the future, unplug is what I'm hearing you say, Margaret, from the chaos and insulate yourself into these learnings so that you can stay focused and balanced on the things that are important.
Well, and I do unplug. I don't really enjoy watching it because it seems to be staged so much. It's like people are creating a drama on purpose. But when I look at it, I do detach myself from it and I observe it.
Observe it as the observer. Yes.
Yeah. And I try to insulate myself from the turmoil. But I think that what they're conveying in this is that as you progress, you are able to insulate yourself because a lot of people are troubled in the world. I just learned of a client of mine that's just not doing well, and I was shocked to hear it. And he just has fallen into depression. But people, they don't know how to deal with life. And what the Russells are giving us in this course is guidance so that you can deal with it and you can excel and you can be happy.
Yes. Well, let's pull up Karen Elkin's comment because she's helping us out behind the scenes. And she says, we come in as youthful explorers. Sometimes this is not explored as it's never too late. Imagine, dream, and explore. So I think that's, and can we imagine where everybody who's struggling with the way the world is right now, because it is more confusing and more chaotic and it's moving faster than ever. And if you don't have an understanding of these higher knowing, it's very easy to get lost in the sense self. Is it not, team?
Yes. And also remember that that's the first key that they gave me. I'm going to be repetitive on this. But this is why we daily meditate and pray, so that we remove ourselves from those distractions and stay centered in our divine. And yes, there's chaos going on all around us, and there's also great, beautiful things happening. I'm sorry, I'm a little jumpy. I've got a friend that got overlapped.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the importance of the daily meditations. I cannot begin to press enough. I've gotten very good at it at least 3 times a day now, and it's gotten me through a lot.
All right, so I'm going to keep us going, team, because we have some other questions, some other key things, and we're inching closer and closer to our next break. So the question here on page 708 is this one. The God mind being omnipresent and omnipotent. Okay, so we've now added on another word. Would not the thinking that springs from that mind be of the same quality? Hence, not illusion. So, team, if you'll indulge me, let me read this next paragraph, and I'm going to ask you to comment. Yes, it is the same quality. It is illusion, but illusion is also omnipresent and omnipotent as illusion. Mind is undivided, unchanging, motionless. Mind knows, all cap. I encourage you to jot that in the chat box. Mind knows. Thinking is giving action to mind knowing. The thinking of mind is divided, changing, and in continuous motion. Motion cannot be stillness. Sound cannot be silence. Changing cannot be unchanging, but sound can manifest that which lies within silence. Change can manifest the unchanging, and the divided can manifest the undivided. All right, so before we continue, team, help someone who's never heard this language before. John?
Well, remember earlier today, I shared with you my 2 examples of helping people take idea and take their imaginings and bring them into being. So I got 2 simple examples here for our audience. And one is, let's take the alphabet. Okay. And it can be the alphabet of any language, but we'll just say the English language. And we have 26 letters, right? And so I went out and asked Siri, I said, how many words are in the English language? And came back at around 1 million, that there was about 1 million words. And so there's the play right there. So in your mind, if you imagined an alphabet of these letters, and then it's like, how many combinations of words and stories and events and descriptions can I bring forth from those imaginings that I have? And then another example is simply a deck of cards. Everybody's familiar with a deck of cards or have played cards of some kind, right? So you've got the deck in front of you. You can shuffle it and split it into 2, right? You've got four suits, all right? And think of the number of games that have been invented simply from that deck of cards. And so people have taken that idea and they've made it manifest through the actual doing or playing those games. So I just wanted to try to keep things simple for our audience.
Yeah.
Don't get too carried away. Yeah, you are God, and yeah, we're teaching you that you're God and all that. But and then there's the practical side of it, right?
So I had a thought, and then I'll go to Margaret. So part of what I enjoyed so much about the alphabet example is I have a love affair with words. I always have. That's part of why I love books. I love poetry. I love the way people speak. That's part of how Ken Pearson got my heart, his ability to just captivate me with his words. But this idea of being able to take an alphabet, each one of us are actually mini creators. So whether we're taking the alphabet and we're sending a thank you note, whether we're creating a recipe, whether we're writing an article, whether we're publishing a book, whether we're simply speaking the words, that is an act of creation, of bringing an idea forward. And it was such a lovely, simple example of like, wow. Margaret?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is really a difficult paragraph to digest. I thought the original question was a rather clever question, because she's saying, well, if God is omnipotent, why would he create an illusion? So I thought it was a rather clever question, but I think it really comes back to, you really can't have motion without a fulcrum. And so the fulcrum is the unchanging. See, if you don't have a fulcrum, right, any kind of motion would not have any kind of pattern. I don't know that motion would even be possible if you don't have a fulcrum. So that's how I interpret this. So, you have an idea. The idea is not visual. It's not essentially real. It's in your imaginings, right? And then you have to give it form. But I think that, again, the Russells are just trying to make us realize that, there is an ever present fulcrum in every action in life.
Yes.
I mean, which is amazing. If you think about it, that's why it makes you realize, well, God has to be everywhere because God has to control every motion. So you have to have that fulcrum. Yeah.
I think
Well, and
God
you say it very interesting, Margaret. You said, if God was omnipotent, why is he creating? Because it's fun. Can we all just get to the point? I'm coming to you, John. Can we just get to the point that it's fun? So when you think about human beings at any given moment, you see people creating music, and it's really fun to watch people in music. It's really fun to watch people dance. It's really fun to experience someone throwing a party. It's really fun to go over to John Bonzel's, and he has a whole spread with all of his china and his stuff to make it all kind of the fun experience. It is fun to come to the museum and for me to experience Walter Russell's paintings and sculptures here at the museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. Creation is fun. So can we place that in the chat box for just a moment? And when we truly enjoy and understand the beauty of creation and the energy of creation and looked at ourselves as creators, wow, we would walk through the world, I'm almost done, John, in such a different way. And in fact, Ken and I were talking just recently saying, we've got to move into more of an energy creation mode. That is our existence. So we're actually mini creators, all of us, and we're always creating because it's fun. John?
Well, I want people to understand that God is a comedian and has a great sense of humor. And that's why he created the duality of the universe. And then once you figure it out, like the Russells have explained it to you, and then God sits back and goes, gotcha. Because it really isn't happening at all. So try to bring a little humor into your life. Try to bring a little humor into other people's lives because God loves humor.
And think about it. I mean, even it cracks me up sometimes when I'll see a TikTok video and the sheer effort that some people go into creator content to go into just to make people laugh. I'm like, that is just such a beautiful skill. So what happens is we all are like walking through this world and we are in a creation mode. And to me, that was part of the excitement of the Russell work.
Yeah, can I jump in for a second? The Russell, Dr. Russell in the Universal One and Leo and God Will make it very clear that it is an eternal creating universe. An eternal omniscient fulcrum God cannot create not create but eternal. The difference between the physical universe and the eternal fulcrum God is the physical universe is eternally in motion, where God is eternally at stillness. So you're not here to be punished or here to escape physical existence. You're here to manifest divinity, and you can take as long as you want to do that. There's nobody holding a timer saying you're going to hell if you don't do it by this time. That's foolishness, and that's the mindset of a child. You have eternity to get it right or wrong until you know. It's that simple.
Well, and before we go to our next break, let's bring up Bonnie's comment. And Margaret, if you'll read that, because I think there's a lot of wisdom in this one as well.
In the beginning was the word. I think the word may have been create.
That's a lovely way to think about it, Bonnie. Absolutely love that. And so as you get ready, as you take this next break for 3 minutes, may you simply drink in and draw in the effervescence of this message. To the panel, we have 4 more questions I need your help getting through in the next 30 minutes. So we'll be mindful of that. Everyone take a break and have some fun. See you in 3.
And bounteous measure.
All right, my dear ones, if you will find your way back, please find your way back. And so during our break, I had a call from our other team member, Ken Pearson, and he couldn't help but comment as he's listening in. And he said, what fun would it be for the creator, if he's all knowing and all powerful, to put in place a drama where they know everything. And so part of the power of duality, he was saying, it's almost like that's how you end up, you go and you find love, you search for all of the things that you're searching for. He said it much more poetic than I did, but it was really kind of fun. And what he reminded me of is I've been feeling for quite some time, on a personal note, that we are all in the midst of a cosmic scavenger hunt, a cosmic treasure hunt to find who we really are. And in fact, that thought has inspired me on a book that I'm working on called The Mystery of Yourself. But think of the great delight when you learn a nugget of yourself. I love scavenger hunts. I think they're fabulous. And so I believe that is the dance that I am on with the creator of this glorious cosmic scavenger hunt. So just another thought for us. Just another thought. All right. So why don't we go into this time as an illusion issue? We've got 4 more questions to go over, and then we've got some commentary here at the end, which is really important. So I would like us to get through the 4 questions, team, and then get to the commentary, because some really important conversations. So I'm going to 709. John, if you'll just read that question. I cannot see how time.
I cannot see how time could be considered to be an illusion. To me, it's the most real thing I know of, even as real as matter. Will you tell me where I'm wrong?
If you'll go into half of the next paragraph, John.
Yes. And the answer is, your senses tell you that there is such an effect as time. Your senses see day following night, event following event, one experience following another, your body growing old, flowers and forests rising from the earth and disappearing. But your senses deceive you mightily, because they are limited to seeing just a pinhole view of nature.
So they go on to talk a lot more about this, and they talk about our senses, the sleep, and the very last comment here on this page is it talks about there is a backward flow to time which voids its forward flow. So this is what Karen was asking us earlier. So if I could ask the panel just to comment on this nature of time, because later on the next page, it says from the Divine Iliad, every action in nature is voided as it occurs. Next page, James. Is repeated as it is voided, and is recorded as it is repeated. So let's give this question 4 minutes for the panel to dive into this issue of time as an illusion. I'm dying to hear. Oh, I am very curious. No dying. I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Well, I can start if you like. I think the Russells would simply say, time is a function of the senses. So in other words, our senses are in fact only 1/2 of the whole. So every day we're actually only seeing 1/2 of the whole. If we could see the whole, then, we would have no concept of time, because we're not seeing the voidance half. And
that phrase you said, Margaret, is very important. Time is a function of the senses. So
right.
I'd encourage everybody to jot that down, because we capture this in the YouTube. I think that's really powerful, because I never considered time as a sense, but it makes so much sense when you say that. Unintended.
Right, and I love the way they describe it. It's a pinhole view of nature, and that's really all our senses give us. Is a pinhole view. And in an earlier example, they said, as an airplane moves forward, there's a similar force right behind the airplane that's just as powerful. It's actually a sucking force. That's the invisible reaction to the plane moving forward, but we don't see the suction, right? If you were right behind the plane, you would feel it. So simultaneously, there's always the voidance occurring, but the voidance is invisible.
Okay, thank you. Who else wants to chime in?
I'm going to try to make some sense of this.
Go for it. Go for it, John.
I think what I would recommend to our audience is try not to get too caught up in this golden principle. Know that it exists. You only experience one half of it anyway. So enjoy the one half that you can sense, that you can see, that you can measure, that you can be part of. Otherwise, if you want to become a 360 illuminate and go crazy,
Well, so to be honest with you, this was one of the more advanced concepts that was very difficult for me as just a 3-year student. So we don't want anybody to reach a point where you're like, wow, I don't get it, I want to stop. That's not the point of all this. What it is, if you go, oh, I don't get it, I don't get this yet. I don't get this yet. Because the sheer commitment of going through the home study course and studying this and spending time in meditation, all of this information and knowing is your divine birthright. So it simply means that it's on its way to you. Is that a fair enough way to say it, team?
yes, I like it.
Okay.
I have just one more little quip, and that is, so often a woman's work is invisible, right? Women are nurturers. They traditionally have taken care of the house. They do the dishes. They make the beds. They clean the house. Traditionally, that's what they've done, and it's invisible. But the invisible part of that, or the care that is taken into putting that into action, that is also invisible. But it's like it's 2 halves of one equation. So a woman can create a beautiful environment.
Yes.
And, and a lot of people don't acknowledge the value in that. And yet it's their action that's creating it. So it's the care. Care is an invisible quality.
It is.
And the action of doing all those so-called mundane actions, whether it's in a job or whether it's in life, right? The quality of care is the invisible half of it.
Well, and that's what, when you can joke, especially in the younger, in the 20s and 30s, you always know the difference when you walk into a bachelor's home versus a home that is nurtured by a woman. And so I always found it kind of funny when I would hear men complain about the number of pillows that were on their couches or on their beds, because they were like, I don't know what it is about women and pillows. But what I started to joke with some men was like, listen, every pillow is equal to some love for you. So don't go dissing the pillows, because it is the invisible equation showing you that there's been a great deal of care brought to this equation. So I thought you all might get a chuckle out of that. All right. So John, I know there's
you
right,
a
you
Leo
can jump
quote?
in, and we've got 3 more questions, dear.
I know, but I'm going to give you a Leo quote on Margaret's description there. And Leo said that work is love made visible.
Let's capture that quote then, if we would, James. Work is love made visible. Tell us more, John, right quick before we continue on the bottom of page.
Well, that's the invisible that Margaret's talking about. That's the love principle. You may not see the physical act of love, but you can see the results of that act of kindness and that act of love. And Margaret's right. A lot of time that goes unseen, unspoken of, but the result is there, and the effort is still there.
Well, and that is part of what the feminine energy does. So that was one of the very first things that I did with John. Is when we had our first Russell experience, I worked very hard to bring in flowers and greenery and as much love, because I was trying to show the beauty of love manifest. So James, if we can capture that principle, please, as a quote on there. Work is love made visible. Thank you. Thank you. All right, team. So we're skipping right ahead here to the bottom of page 710. I'm just going to read part of this question and jump us into the answer. So do find some humor in the first sentence, tongue in cheek. I want to do some work in the shock wards of our state asylum. All right. So that's not a sentence you hear a lot these days, but anyway, shortly after returning home, a sudden depression, this was from the 1950s, Shortly after returning home, a sudden depression overtook me, which is the strongest statements of truth would not eradicate. I felt a hopeless feeling within me as if all my years of seeking and trusting were turned to naught. Okay, so, and it goes on to say, we're told to go comfort the sick. So, John, if you would, please read the answer until the end of the where it talks about the divine Iliad, please.
Yes. If James will scroll down for me a little bit. Thank you, James. When you go to comfort the sick, you go to give to them what they lack, and you have in abundance, which is your love, your balance, and your joyousness of God awareness in you. If you can succeed in giving it to them, they will have what you have in the measure of your ability to reflect your light. Instead of your doing that, you allow them to extend their unbalance to you. You would be giving them nothing of your light because of your sympathy and other emotions which you thought would comfort them. In the book of healing and the healing principle in volume 2 of the Divine Iliad, it is carefully explained that sympathy to an ailing person gives recognition of the ailment, making of it a reality. You let them reflect their absence of God awareness into you instead of the reverse. You must learn to insulate yourself against the ills of others by your knowing of your divinity instead of being a conductor of them, by letting them pass through you and touch you in their passing. Now that's a very powerful,
That is powerful
statement.
Very powerful. And so before we get into this next paragraph, let's pause for a moment, because that's really what we're being asked to do during this awakening of humanity, is it not? For us to grow in our Christ consciousness and our cosmic consciousness, and that as we work to the world, it is not that we're immune to what's happening. It is the fact that we each shine our light so brightly that others are being reminded of the light within them. Jim?
Yeah, my old friend Howard Hall, who was also a Russell student and a dear friend of Lao, used to say to us, when you're going through life and you look down into the vortex of those who are not yet seeking the light, the last thing that you want to do is reach into that vortex and try and pull them out, because they will pull you in. But if you see someone looking up to the light, you can share your light with them to guide the way. And that's what Margaret and John and Russells are talking about here. It's literally brings alive the term that's being in the world and not of it. To know that it's not your place to save them. It's your place to be a light to shine a way out for them.
The wisdom in this is staggering to me. And so I wanted to go on down to the next paragraph here, because it says on the bottom here of 711, one phrase in your question convinces us that you do not understand this principle. This phrase is, a sudden depression overtook me, which the strongest statements of truth would not eradicate. This sounds like relying upon affirmations instead of knowledge. No matter what truths one may utter, they are of no benefit whatsoever unless there is full knowledge of their meaning and comprehension of their practice behind them. Affirmations are no more effective when uttered by a human being than they are when they're uttered on a gramophone. Love that word. Unless they are uttered with knowledge of their relationship to nature. All caps.
All right. This is John's opportunity to repeat what Leo often said to him. Will you go with it, John? There is no...
What I was going to do, Jim, I was going to go one step higher. I was going to give a Jesus quote, if that's okay.
Okay, well, that's acceptable.
I mean, Leo was up there. Don't get me wrong. I thought I'd just go to the big guy.
Go right to the Jesus. Okay, got it.
Jesus said, cast not your pearls before swine. And that is indicative of what we're talking about here. Unless someone is ready, unless someone is open to receivership, you're just wasting your time. You'll talk until you're blue in the face. But like Jim said earlier, that our responsibility to our fellow human being is that when they do reach out, then we have a responsibility to meet them halfway and to help them on their journey as well.
So add the comment that Jim was referring to. There is no path.
Oh,
Go ahead.
there is no position, technique, or ritual to God. God is. Is that the one you were looking for, James?
Yes.
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 So, okay. So I think it's really important. So, John, I appreciated what you said, and I lovingly want to make sure that we have to be very careful when it comes to spiritual knowledge to not allow ego to inch into it, because it is inched in every facet of religion, spirituality, and knowledge in the universe. And so we have to be very careful with this idea. When we learned about Jesus from many of us, or many other spiritual teachers, Krishna, Muhammad, Allah, many others that are out there, it was all about spending time with others that maybe were poor or were on the other side of the tracks, so to say. And it's all about making sure your light shines so that they're ready for it. So I think we need to be really careful. I invite us all to be very careful, because ego shows up in an energy field. So for me, one of my gifts is I'm able to read people's energy fields 90% of the time pretty accurately. And ego always colors what the real intention is. This is part of why I believe it's so powerful to stay in this idea of the love principle, because when you are in that point of love, everything else, just the light just shines so brightly. Think about the last time, I'd like to ask everybody to think about the last time you met somebody who shined brightly. And think about when you're walking through your day-to-day world, can you meet those people where you can see the lights turned on? To me, that's becoming much more evident. I can tell if someone, and when you think about a three-way bulb, if there's a low wattage bulb, a medium wattage, or a bright wattage, or even brighter than that, I've come to personally even refer to that almost as someone's light quotient. But I'm beginning to see that people's light is turning on, and in a very, very bright, beautiful, and almost magical way. And if I had to describe the home study course in only 4 words, it would be turn your light on.
I think Margaret turned her light on to the 3rd switch tonight. 3rd spot.
By all means.
Look how radiant she is, and she's just glowing.
Agree. I agree. So let us go ahead, because of time. Let's go ahead and jump down here to the bottom of page 711. We'll have a brief answer to this, because the last segment of what the Russells had to say was really important. They asked this: what are dreams? What is hypnosis? Are these phenomena of any significance in understanding the nature of mind or the illusion of sense perceptions? So, John, if you'll just read that first paragraph. We won't dive deep into this, but just enough to whet the appetite.
All right. And the Russells say, dreams are the result of not being fully asleep. Sleep means more or less lowering of the vibration potential passing through your brain, not mind. The purpose of that lowering of potential is to let your senses, not mind, relax and rest for an interval, so they fully stop all action of thinking and imagining.
So they go on to describe more about this, and we'll come to a comment in just a moment. But I mean, this is why many of us find that sometimes the most intuitive insight, or our ability to commune with the divine, happens when we're falling asleep, right when we're waking up. For many of us, I know I've been woken up every single night at 3:30 for the past few months. It seems like this idea of the dream sleep state. Team, anything you want to comment before we wrap up and go into the next section?
Well, go ahead, Margaret.
The only thing I would add is, there's a lot of Americans that have a difficult time sleeping. And I once heard a doctor express it this way, that if you can't sleep, it's your body or your soul is telling you something is wrong, that there's something you have to address, you have to change, you have to alter. And that's why you're not sleeping, because you're troubled. And so it's an indication that you have to really look inward with yourself and determine what it is that you're not getting right. And you have to make it right so that you can, as the Russells say, shut down the senses, stop that current going through the brain. You have to entirely go to the zero so that you can recharge properly for the following day.
Very powerful. John?
I would add to that, and you've heard me say how you should teach yourself to devalue. So we just learned through these 9 lessons that motion is an illusion, doesn't really exist. So people that can't sleep, they're tense, they have issues, they have problems. Think how silly it is, wasting all this anxiety and effort and so on, where it doesn't exist, but yet you're spending all this time and aggravation and worry about something. So this is where these teachings, Leo said it often, the practicality of spirituality. So taking these principles, taking these this knowledge and applying it to your everyday life. Because until you get it, you can't uplift anybody, because they'll look at you and say, well, my God, look at you. You're a physical wreck or a mental wreck. Who you going to teach? So
the practicality of spirituality is what we're about. And I wanted to bring up 2 comments here. Karen Mahan, James, if we'll bring up her comment. She said, you are all so on point this evening and fun too. Thank you very much, Karen. And Bonnie says this. She says, I love the people who have their lights shining and have no expectations. Wow. Wouldn't that be glorious for us to have more and more and more of that? So as I segue to us here, at the end of page 713, this was a reminder from the Russells before we go into their letter to students. It says, the whole of these teachings explains the difference between sensing and knowing. By carefully reviewing the lessons from the beginning, and here's another reminder, from the beginning, you will see the golden thread of that thought throughout the entire series. Okay. Now, when we go over here to page 715, I wanted to bring up a couple of things and ask the group to comment on this. So they would have a summary commentary. And notice first what the salutation is. It says, our treasured students. Our treasured students. So notice the endearment that was gifted to us from these 2. And they go into where I'm talking about the yellow highlighted. In all the former lessons which you have received, that knowledge which alone can take death away from you has been released in as simple language and form as we could possibly give it. John, if you could read the next paragraph, please.
The mistaken concept that death of the body can be conquered and the body continue on forever must be erased from your thinking. Continuity of the positive body is not what conquering death means. What it really means is that knowledge of a continuous interchange between pairs of bodies will have so increased your sense perception that you can manifest your thinking in both halves of your body. You will then know that life is continuous and you will no longer sense those intervals that we call death.
And the next paragraph says this: deep meditative study of this course will prepare you for the next units, thereby gaining for you a possible 1,000 to 10,000 years of comprehension in one lifetime instead of in 100 or 1,000 lifetimes. Knowledge alone can bridge the gap to self-transcendency. So let's pause for just a moment there. So first of all, I've been feeling for my entire life like this was a bonus lifetime. Like if I could have a little pinball machine that went alert, 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 you win. It struck me as this lifetime was like, wow, we can get so much mileage from this lifetime. And this is them reaffirming it, that if we actually will put in the effort, and all of you listening right now are putting in the effort, that you can get more out of this lifetime than 1,000 or even 10,000. Can we just pause for a moment and say what a fabulous thought that is?
I'll tell you how fabulous it is. Now think about it. You gain this knowledge, you gain this understanding, and with the experience I had last week, I'm like, damn, I don't have to come back and redo this again. I'm going to head to another planet where people appreciate the light and understanding. And
well, and that's really the goal of where we're all going for. And I remember when I first stepped out of my traditional Southern Baptist world and I was running parallel tracks, right? When I figured out that this was a possibility, I wanted to make sure I got as much mileage out of this as possible because I was just like John. I'm not doing this stuff again. I'm going to
That's
pass
right.
the course. I am not repeating this, right? So,
Well, another way to look at that, Kimberly, is just think of where each one of us would be if we didn't have this course.
I
mean, where else can you go? I mean, there's been some great books written. There is still good material, but you know, this course really has it all. I mean,
I'd still be chasing wild women and stuff. So I'm so glad I discovered this message.
well, in all fairness, Margaret, what I have found, you know, because I found it much later than the rest of you, I think it's a little unfair that the three of you had it so much longer. But some of us may have already had that knowledge, John. So a rat-a-tat-tat, we just never know, right? How long? It's not always waiting who comes up the mountain, right? But I do want to mention that I really do believe that the Russell work is like putting the parameters, the outer part of a puzzle. So we've all put together a puzzle before, and it's rather daunting when you see a 1,000-piece puzzle there on the table. But your first goal is to put all the edges together, right? And then all of a sudden you put the other puzzle pieces and you're looking at the box to see if you can kind of guess where the puzzle pieces are. To me, having studied, you know, Margaret, so many other modalities before I came to this work, the Russell work to me was like the outer edges. All of a sudden, the puzzle pieces that I've been studying for my entire life all fit together so much more beautiful. Before I ask the group to comment, can we pull up Kathy's comment, please? And John, if you'll read her comment.
Sure. You become conscious of consciousness and don't need to keep coming back on that slow wheel of karma.
All right.
You know, I'll never forget this one time I was listening to a tape this yogi did. And I think he got caught, he got caught in this loop. And he kept saying, to be conscious of consciousness is to be conscious. And it kind of kept going on. But I get it. So once you are there,
sure.
And what I would like to do, Kimberly, if I may, I wrote a note here. And this is important, and I would like our audience to kind of like see this as a homework type thing. Sensing versus knowing. So in your conversation with your mate, with your conversation with a work associate or someone that you may know, it could be a relative. And in those conversations and in those doings, try to establish what is sensing and what is knowing. Is the conversation that of a higher vibration, or is it just regular old nonsensical bullshit type thing? But it's a great learning tool to be able to identify when you're sensing and when you're in a state of knowing.
Love that. Love that.
Now, let me jump in here for a second. One of the things that John and Karen and I have in common is that we got to experience the joy that Leo and literally
you, Margaret and John. You, Margaret and John. Yes.
Yes, Margaret, John, and I mean, whatever I said. We got to experience the joy of being in her presence while people from all over the world came to talk to and meet with her, who were inspired by their writings. Now think about that. The average person out there listening and almost all new students, the greatest difficulty that they have in their day-to-day life is finding people that think this way.
Yes.
Because we were in the vortex of and living with the living messenger, we got to experience dozens and dozens of people that were enlightened and seeking more light in this message. So we became almost spoiled. And you get a sense that there's an ease to it. Well, there's not an ease to it, because once that master left the planet and people of less understanding begin to move through the message and want to control and not give it, something was profoundly lost. And we found ourselves out in the world, once again, looking for people that were seeking enlightenment instead of being immersed in people seeking enlightenment. And so the beauty of what we're doing here is we're giving people the opportunity to become immersed with people who are like themselves seeking enlightenment. So
Yeah.
this is a wonderful gift, but the journey is still personal. It's still individual, and we must concentrate on that. But
It is.
take comfort in the joy of being around people that you can talk to about this.
I am absolutely with you on that. So a couple things before I want us to go to Karen's visual journey. Down to the bottom of page 16, 716, we have a paragraph, and I want to bring out just a few things because the Russells are normalizing for us some things that we're hearing about. We all have that spiritual radar, and some of us are beginning to feel it. I know that's for me big time, and many of us. We've even given it a name, telepathy. So if you would, please jot that down in the chat box. Telepathy, all caps. But telepathy does not cover it fully. For telepathy means thought transference, inferring between living people. That power of thought transference, which is unfolding in the human race, includes the thought of universal mind whenever manifested, whether through the now living or long since, in quotes, dead. Thought is eternal. And all thought patterns are recorded, both positively and negatively. The human race will someday unfold its range of perception to include that which has disappeared with that which now is. So I want to bring up to everyone who has their home study course, and if you don't have it, please get a copy of it. This is a very important paragraph. You are hearing more and more people understand this idea. And I actually talk about telepathy in the presentation that I did for the University of Science and Philosophy in August. We'll drop that link in there. But this idea of thought transference and the universal mind is really important because the Russell science, I believe, is going to demystify what many people call woo-woo. One of my favorite quotes was somebody said that Walter Russell has taken one woo out of woo-woo. Which I thought was just said in a beautiful way. John?
Woo.
Ha ha. So he can't help himself. So page 717, I wanted to bring up a few things as we're finishing up, and then we'll ask the team because we have our visual journey and then we have a lot more announcements. But I want to go where it's in the blue quotes here. So John, if you would please read what's in between the blue quotes, the next 2 units. This
is exciting, guys. This is what you've been waiting for. This is where it's all going to take place.
Yeah, start with we have entitled these 9 units, John.
We have entitled these 9 units The Science of Man. The next 2 units will be entitled The Science of the Cosmos, and will open the doors to the invisible octaves of matter to give science the much needed roadmap into space, which it sorely needs.
All right. So your preparation for it by the past lessons will help you comprehend more than you think possible. Do not therefore anticipate. So please drink this in. Do not therefore anticipate this new knowledge as being over your head or too difficult for you. You will be surprised to find that the preparation given you has opened your comprehension more than you even suspect. Accept it, therefore, with joy, for it is priceless to you. Love that. Love that. The 12th and final unit will sum up the complete universal meaning of man's purpose on earth and what he must do to fulfill it. And to me, dear ones, I want to bring up this last highlighted sentence when it talks about today and forever, we send our loving salutations to you and remind you that in our thought wave universe, your own shall come to you timelessly and endlessly. And then here's my favorite out of the whole lesson. So keep your thinking balanced and filled with love. Let me say that again. So keep your thinking balanced and filled with love. And the universe, John, go ahead.
I can't see it.
And the universe will give back to you all that you give in bounteous measure.
Yes. So Leah always had a wonderful quote. She said, "You can never give anything away." You think about that. You can never what? You can never give anything away. Think about that for a moment. No, I'm just saying. So in the giving, just like right here, right? The universe will give back to you all that you give in your measure. So the more you give, the more you get. It's that simple. Right?
Uh.
Now, previously in that paragraph, when it talked about the octaves, boy, is that going to be exciting for these people.
And we're going to talk about this, John. I've got a couple of pictures to show. We're going to show you that after the visual journey. For everyone who's listening, please know that Karen Elkins, who is behind the scenes tonight, but gloriously doing her thing, has done her thing. She gifted us with one video at the beginning. She has come up with a visual journey here for the end of this particular lesson. Sit back, enjoy, and know that all of these videos are on our playlist on YouTube. Here we go. bring Karen back on. Karen, please, James, bring her on. So
Awesome.
You'll come off mute, Karen. James is turning off the sound. So Karen, just a comment or two about what was it like to work through that, because it was obviously another example of your divine inspiration.
Her genius.
Thank you.
Yes.
I had to really work on this one hard. This was not an easy one with the idea of things going backwards and forwards. And so I actually had to use a little bit of chat to go through, look at images, and it was quite a lesson for me. And it hit me in a really kind of profound way. So the one thing that came to me as you're watching and listening, I always get taken by how your conversation goes and what I perceive, and at the end, few things I should add in. I always love that. I always love that. So it's always interesting. So anyway.
Well, and that's actually part of why we designed the panel the way it was. We have our seasoned students. We have Karen, who's been familiar with the work, but actually the first time that she's going through the home study course. This is only my third time going through the home. You know, I've been 3-year student, so my fourth time going through the home study course. And so this is the perspective, is for us all to bring something different. And every single time that we open it up, the magic is now we're discovering another layer.
Yes,
So to the team,
no, just saying, add a layer, I add a layer, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful sort of symphony, and I do appreciate the thought. So yeah,
it is a symphony. And speaking of that, we'll go to slide 11, James. So I want to just a couple of many announcements, and John, we're going to have a space to talk about Unit 10 in just a moment. So I'm coming to you. So a reminder for everybody as we look at March, we are now moving into Unit 10. So there's a snapshot of where we're at, just to give you some ideas. And if you'll take a look at the next slide, this was the outline by Walter and Lao about what we'll be covering in Unit 10. You can take a screenshot and go ahead and meditate on that. For those that have your copy, please go ahead and dive into it. For those of you that don't, please go ahead and have yourself a copy. And if you need help in doing that, you can go to philosophy.org and look for the scholarships. But I wanted to mention something rather magical. So John, I have two slides I'm going to show first, because you were a big part, and you and Jim were a big part of what unfolded. So this third edition, if we'll take a look, this special third edition of the home study course was the effort to bring colorized images into the home study course. And John, I know that was a project that was certainly close to your heart during when you were president of the University of Science and Philosophy. So I wanted to, and that also continued with a leather bound copy, which I'll talk about in just a moment. James, if you'll take a quick snapshot, I want to show that page and then come back to this one. So both of these were projects that were near and dear to your heart. And so Unit 10, it really is, if we'll go back to the previous slide, shows these beautiful color images. Can you just share with the group the inspiration behind this, please?
You know, I was going through some of the archives and just reading some of Leo's notes, and I found this line that she said that she hopes someday that she could colorize the home study course. And I thought, you know what? It's time. And the technology is available, and it was a concerted effort. You know, the staff, Tim Gillespie, who's no longer with us, played a huge part in with the color graphics, and Michaela, you know, and her mastery of the computer and going out and trying to grab images, you know, and it was a wonderful effort. And then I'll let Jim speak on the 3-volume set. I'll never forget that we were just sitting here one day at my kitchen, and we were talking, and away we went, wasn't it, Jim?
Just took off. We need to put it in book form.
There it is. Yeah. And
so I wanted to mention both of this because this one is more of a collector's edition. It's more expensive there on the website, but it is a beautiful edition. John, I don't know if either one of you have your copy handy. You can show people right quick, but I simply wanted to show this because this, oh, thank you, Margaret. That's what she's reading from. Look at her. There's Jim with his copy. I wanted to mention this to you all because this is a really these are examples of so much love that was poured into the university. Both this leather bound that was actually sponsored by one of the board members there, and this whole idea of bringing color to the home study course. This is a big deal. This is when like today's relevance comes right in with what happened before. Margaret, you as a current board member of the USB, anything you want to say about these two?
Well, I think it really, really aids in comprehension is for the science, because that's where you need the colors in all the charts that Walter Russell did. And it's really amazing and a huge enhancement to the course.
So I wanted to say, just as a relatively new student, I wanted to say a gracious thank you to all of you that have poured so much time and energy in actually opening the museum. I would have never found the work had it not been for the museum. I want to say a gracious thank you for all of the leadership and the love you have poured into all this so that you gift it for posterity for everyone else. And it does not go unnoticed what any of you have done, what any of the team has done, what any student now, or all of the ones that in the past that have gotten us to this point, and who knows, and all the students that are listening to us and those in the future. So a very big heartfelt thank you from me, Kimberly Faith, because it is an absolute joy to be a part of this work, and I honor and thank you all. So a few thoughts as we finish up here. If we'll take a look at slide 15, we have an announcement for you. Part of what has happened is we've had so much conversation that actually in March, we're testing a new idea, and we're going to add on an extra broadcast on Tuesday nights. So here is just a quick snapshot of what we're going to do. This is going to be where one member of the panel, one or two members of the panel come on. So it's not going to be a full panel like you've seen before. It's just a personal passion to offer some additional insights. And it came up during one of our meetings recently when we were like, wow, we love this message so much. John started it all by saying, I would love to talk more about the Walter Russell lectures, John. And then Jim said, I'd love to talk about, and then this just birthed. So we will promote it. It is new, so give us some time. I'll be kicking it off this week, talking about the timelines of the Russells. It was an activity that I actually planned for the Russell experience. And we'll continue this into April and see what kind of feedback we receive from everybody. So you'll see in the April schedule, we don't have the titles yet because we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you. So feel free to email me, KimberlyFaith1@gmail.com. What do you want to know? I already feel one seated in my heart to talk about the song, Our Soul Song, which I believe is embedded in the Russell work. And so this is a chance for each one of us to simply add. And so Margaret, if you want to, just let me know. So I did want to pause for a moment, though. Margaret and I were both at an event at the museum this past Friday night, and that's on the next image there. And I want to bring attention to the artist who we heard, Matt Venuti. And it was a lovely event there at the Russell Museum. And for me, I'll ask Margaret to comment in just a moment. The next slide will show you. But as I was listening and watching him take these gorgeous images of the universe, James, if we'll go to the next page, I could not help but think that I was literally experiencing the grand symphony of creation. And it was very, very powerful. Margaret?
Yeah, I think his music was very healing, and he really showed his versatility and his skill. And then almost all of his instruments were instruments I did not even recognize. They were very unusual, and but I felt it was very healing, and it was very synergistic for the Russell Museum.
Very interesting instrument, so be sure to check out his music. And we have some additional exciting news. And so for some of you that are really diving into the science, you are welcome to join. As you'll see, you can join one of the events at the USB that dives into the science. They have more interactive questions. But I want to move on here to the next exciting announcements that we have. Because you remember last week we talked about a student spotlight? Well, we mentioned something last week about one of our favorite students that's actually online now, Dee Tonkin. If you'll take a look at the next one, that we asked and said that she's going to be having a conference where she's going to some homeschooling and some other conferences to promote the books that she's written using Walter Russell's Messages for Children. And we were able to successfully raise the money for our April and May trade shows. So much love for all those that contributed for that. That was exciting. And this has been a dream. This next slide is a dream that I've had since the beginning, is we did finally have an offer to donate a Vibe board for the Awaken Your Inner Genius broadcast. What does that mean? It's a board that's going to help us show and take all of the images of Walter Russell and be able to overlay them. So give me a little time to learn that. That was incredibly exciting, was it not, John?
Yes, it was.
And so one last thing that we want to bring up is we want to try some new things during our next 60 to 90 days as we're finishing things up. So I want to make an offer to all of you that are listening. Do any of you have a desire to want to be live with us? Oh, the pressure is on. So if you do, please email me, KimberlyFaith1@gmail.com, or the Awaken email. You'll see it all there in the chat box. But perhaps there's some of you that just feel that you have much to say and you want to actually be part of asking us questions during the panel. So this is a new idea. We're not going to do it every single time. We're going to test it out for a couple of times and see how it goes. It is part of our desire to keep making this particular effort even more special and more loving, and just making this a part of overall the collective conversation. Panel, anything you wanted to say about that? John and Jim, you were there as we were discussing this.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
All right. Oh, and look, we actually have a super chat. Oh my gosh, this is like a special moment. Thank you. A big thank you, Mr. Kenneth. What a lovely thing. That's one of the things that we earned. How fun is that? So a gracious thank you to you all. There was a lot to cover. I know we're at the 2-hour mark. There's so much to say. We'll see you Tuesday night if you want to join. Don't worry if you don't. Otherwise, Unit 10 next Sunday. Let's dive into it. And remember, please remember, dear ones, that you are going to deep down, these things. So simply come in and allow the love vibration to wash over you, and spend less time worrying about what your mind gets and more about what your heart is receiving and reflecting the light out in the world. So we're not going to say goodbye. We're going to say until next time. See you next Sunday.